Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering video. Today we'll discuss a few cards from Edge of Eternities that I think are worth mentioning now that the set has been fully released. But before we jump into today's video, I want to make a quick shout out to Mythodom, a shop with awesome accessories for your fantasy hobbies like this all will be one necklace. Check them out and use my discount code in the description for 10% off your order. I won't feature too many cards you've probably already seen from other content creators, but these are definitely worth keeping an eye on and playing. Let's start with Umbral Collar Zealot. This 2-mana creature costs 1 more than Viscera Seer, but the ability to fill your graveyard with Surveil is stronger than the Scry ability on the Seer. Having another sacrifice outlet that only requires creatures or artifacts in mono black is a big deal for several decks. I also like that it's a cleric, which is worth mentioning for all your aura players out there. Next up is Emergency Eject. This non-land destroying instant for white decks gives your opponent a lander token for their permanent. I don't think it will replace Get Lost in Standard, even though it can hit any non-land, but it costs 3 mana. Instead, I see it in mono white commander decks alongside Stroke of Midnight and Generous Gift, simply due to redundancy. Plus, the lander token isn't a creature, which might actually enable a final swing rather than giving your opponent a blocker. Now let's talk about a card for combo decks. Scour for Scrap. In my opinion, this card is insane. First of all, you can choose both modes and they are both extremely strong. Finding an artifact to your hand at instant speed and getting one back from your graveyard are incredibly powerful effects for combo decks. Decks used to rely on Buried Ruin for the recursion and Fabricate for tutoring, but if I had to decide, I'd take Scour for Scrap over Fabricate even with the higher mana cost. For my green-based beatdown players, Seed Ship Impact looks like a great addition alongside Nature's Claim as additional artifact and enchantment removal. It rewards you for low CMC targets with a lander token, which often happens in Commander since many powerful cards are cheaper than you think. It fits especially well in landfall decks as the lander token can either fix your mana or synergize with your game plan. I'd play it alongside other interaction spells like Collective Resistance depending on what your deck wants to do. The Sculpting Blast looks like a cheap non-land bounce spell that we'll be seeing for a long time. The fact that it creates a token if the bounced non-land permanent was attacking makes it more of a tempo neutral or even slightly advantageous play, which means you're not just giving your opponent something back to replay, you're also gaining board presence in return. Virulent Silencer immediately caught my eye. If you're playing an artifact beatdown deck that doesn't focus on tokens too much, this card is a strong choice. The Infect win condition can catch opponents completely off guard, since your deck looks like a standard artifact beatdown deck, and suddenly all of your creatures become infectious artifacts. Timeline Color is likely to see a lot of play in both standard and commander. It's a creature that can be easily replayed from your graveyard for its warp cost, and then hides in exile until the time is right. This makes it excellent at dodging graveyard hate while still providing the kind of sacrifice fodder many decks are looking for. I also appreciate that it has haste, a rare trait among self-recurring creatures aside from Bloodghast, and even then only under specific life total conditions. Now let's get into some higher rarity cards. Lightstall Inquisitor is interesting to me. I don't judge cards that target all opponents until I've tested them, and this one is definitely on my list to test. While it doesn't cause direct card disadvantage for your opponents, it's a nice tax effect. I plan to test it in my Kaika Flicker deck, but of course, if you want to be evil, you can pair this one with Draenus Magistrate in a lock deck. The first card from Edge of Eternities that really caught my eye was Consult the Start Charts. To me, it feels like a better impulse limited to Commander. In that format, the chances of drawing it early are lower, and because it scales with your land count, it only gets better as the game goes on. It reminds me a lot of Memory Deluge from a few years ago in Standard, and I remember how strong that card was. I can't wait to cast it for its kicker costs in the late game, look at 10 cards and pick 2 to put into my hand. The most expensive card mana-wise in this video is Mutinous Massacre. I don't think it's particularly a strong card, but I'm sure it'll lead to some fun moments performance at more casual tables, especially with its choice of even or odd mechanic. It's 1 mana cheaper than Insurrection, and many decks care about taking control of creatures to swing with them and then sacrifice them. I definitely see this one fitting into Rakdos the Muscle, for example. Next is a card for our +1/+1 counter players, Terra Symbiosis. This card hasn't been talked about much, but I'm not sure why. Repeatable card advantage in +1/+1 counter decks seems incredibly strong, and green has a few spells that can protect it. I think it's a fantastic card for Hydra decks. Imagine having a primordial Hydra that scales and draws you 8 cards in your upkeep, as Terra Symbiosis would draw that many cards instead of just 1. Anticausal Vestige is a card I'm really looking forward to play. The key aspect of this card is its leaves the battlefield trigger, which also applies when it's exiled. Putting any type of permanent into play, depending on your land count, is great, as it can also be used to put lands onto the battlefield. I plan to include it in my Kaika Flicker deck, as its generic costs the warp mechanic and it leaves the battlefield trigger all scream play me and flicker me. Its effect reminds me of Kodama of the Eastry, though it's not quite as powerful. Additionally, it's a strong body, which is worth mentioning. Elegy Acolyte is another powerhouse. 4 mana for a 4/4 lifelink is already solid, and its card advantage trigger, drawing up to 3 cards in a commander game, can be incredibly powerful. What I find more interesting is its Void trigger, which interacts with either warped spells or non-land permanents leaving the battlefield. This can include your opponent's non-land permanents, which can easily be triggered by a removal spell since it's a black creature. Getting rewarded for removing something feels great. This card does a lot of things that many commander decks want. Starwinder is definitely a card I want to talk about. Sure, it can draw you an absurd number of cards, so many that you might not even be able to hold them all. But if you don't have a way to remove your maximum hand size, you'll end up discarding a bunch anyway. Warping it in for just 1 turn only makes sense if you already have a board presence and can reliably connect with a hit to make the investment worthwhile. It doesn't really feel like a card you want to hardcast either. Don't get me wrong, if it sticks and you connect, it will almost certainly win you the game. But I personally prefer Enduring Curiosity. It can be flashed in, and it has built-in protection thanks to its death trigger, though it offers less card draw overall. I value consistency in my decks, and that's improved by flexibility like flash and built-in protection. The last card for today is Moonlit Meditation. You can enchant an artifact or creature with this, and whenever you would create a token for the first time each turn, you may create a token that's a copy of the enchanted permanent instead. I'm definitely going to enchant my Riptide Gearhulk with this one and make a ton of copies of it in my Kaika Zephyr Awakener deck. My friends are going to hate it. Alright guys, these were just a few cards from Edge of Eternities that I think are flying a bit under the radar. Let me know what you think about them, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in the next one. Goodbye.